Welcome to the Clayton Vance Podcast. This is where we discuss the art and soul of architecture and explain why the world looks the way it does and what we can do about it. Today, our guest is Mike Hathorne, and he is an author, an educator, urban strategist, and a consultant specializing in demographic change, housing markets, and community design. Now, he's been working in the development industry for 30 plus years, has a breadth of knowledge and experience, and he's sharing that with us today. What we've been doing in this particular episode is this is a series of 3. So there's 2 prior to this. We've gone through zoning, his history, and what's he got to say about zoning. Then we went through density and the problems that we face as we try to do better developments. What we want to talk about this time is some of the solutions. And we're going to be focused on the idea of mixed use. And let's introduce it this way. Everyone loves pizza. If you don't love pizza, go to Naples. And I'm not talking Florida. That's where it all came from, right? And so that was my first experience, just Naples, Italy. That was my first real Italian pizza. And it was like, oh, heaven has just descended upon my taste buds. And what's one of the wonderful thing about, a really great pizza, regardless of where you like it, from Little Caesars or from some authentic Italian cuisine, it's got all the ingredients mixed together in this beautiful slice of heaven. And you just eat it, and it's got the pepperoni and the sausage and the whatever you want to put on it, right? Now, what has happened when you look at zoning and standard Euclidean zoning, which is what we all have, is that they've essentially taken all of the ingredients of that pizza and put it into different categories. And so they have forced us, and that's what zoning does, it forces us to eat the pizza as individual ingredients. It's like, okay, here's your dough. Eat your dough. Oh, you want some tomato sauce on that? Okay, here you go. Here's your sauce. Oh, your pepper, your green pepper? Yeah, you just get to eat that. Your pepperoni? No, we're not going to cook it for you. You just have to have that raw. And that's kind of how you can think about Euclidean zoning. What we're going to look at is mixed use and how you achieve mixed use good and successfully. And that we're just trying to make that pizza delicious again. So with that analogy, Mike, let's start a discussion on mixed use. Define what it is, where to go, how to do it, where it's been successful, where it's failed, and what are the solutions to our problems?
Okay, so the idea of mixed use is that you are taking individual uses which our current practices force you to separate, and you're allowing those uses to come together. Basically 2 formats in which that occurs. One is horizontal, meaning you're putting the corner store next to the apartment building. The other is vertical. You're stacking it. You've got the corner store and you're putting apartments or stacked flats above it. Those are the 2 forms in which mixed use presents itself in the built environment.
Historically, are there any examples?
Oh,
how about every single city prior to the advent of the automobile was a mixed use city?
Yeah.
And
no,
why?
It's they're a bunch. Well, it was out of need.
Yeah.
It was, again, thinking about how what we're doing in terms of creating our environment as human beings, and the way that it was done pre-automobile was based on the scale of the human being and the distance of comfort that they were willing to walk. And so in order to make things more efficient, you were taking what otherwise would be regulated uses that you're pulling apart, and you're just allowing them to mesh together in order to provide convenience relative to travel. I think that's the base principle. It was out of necessity.
And so when we look at mixed use today in the 21st century, what is conjured up in people's heads in terms of that's mixed use? Because I guarantee you, when people go visit, Alexandria, Virginia, when you go up to Salem, Massachusetts, or Charleston, South Carolina, which I was at last month, and it's like no one's walking around that town thinking to themselves, wow, what a beautiful mixed use town. No, they're just thinking, this is an amazing city. I love it.
Yeah. No, I think, I think to start is you typically aren't taking inventory of the uses in the space that it's a lot more authentic, organic, natural that things, there's a flow to a place when it's historic. You're not inventorying and going, oh, there's retail space and oh, I see there's an apartment above it. It's just, you're looking at the building, you're looking at the scale of things, the relationship of the building to the past that people are engaging the building, the scale of the space. And now all of that is regulated. It's not about organic or authentic. It's really about the rigidity of saying this will be this way, and if you're going to do this, then you have to do this, and it's a lot more formulaic today.
Is that why it feels some of these new developments that are trying to be traditional feel fake?
I think it's part of it, and I think part of it too is it takes time. Anything historic has had the ability to age. And, a lot of times projects will, they'll talk about it being Disneyfied.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel authentic because it hasn't had time to become authentic. If you're looking at a community, I'll give you an example. Speaking of Disney, Disney built a town just outside of Disney World called Celebration. And I was able to see Celebration probably within the first couple of years that they had started that. And out of the gate, they built a downtown. And it felt like you're walking down Main Street towards Sleeping Beauty's castle. Everything was new and shiny. All the landscaping was very small. It lacked authenticity because it hadn't had time to age. So clearly people are going to attack it and go after it. And what is Disney doing? But I have visited Celebration, I believe 4 times. And each time I see it, it has gotten better because time has been able to weigh in on it. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't look shiny and new anymore. Plants are larger. The relationship of the place feels a bit more authentic. Not that it doesn't have its challenges. When you build something that large all at once, meaning their little downtown, you're going to make mistakes. They, for example, they built a little movie theater that probably hasn't been open for a decade. Still has the big marquee on it. They've had things come and go. The problem tends to be when you are trying to build mixed use, but you're doing it with the specificity of what the user is going to be inside of the space. And you're not taking into account that businesses will come and go, and that space needs to be able to molt and evolve to different things. If it's too particular, it's going to sit vacant for a longer period of time and create a hole within that mixed use environment.
Okay, so authenticity. This word authenticity, I think that's a big word that we are all focusing on these days. Is I think we're all tired of being sold a bill of goods and just fake people, fake this, fake that. And what's crazy about AI is we're now living in an AI world where you cannot tell what is real anymore, and it's wild. Especially in the architecture world, But guess what? The reality exists. We will go physically touch and experience buildings and our urban environment. And so we want that to be authentic. We
Yeah.
want it to be real. And that Disneyfication of environments, it's interesting because it leads into a different conversation, which we'll address some other time, about the cartoonification of things, which is the Disneyfication, which is kind of the exaggeration of details.
Yeah.
And so you're making something a cartoon and making it a caricature rather than embedding it with character.
Yeah.
But so that's an architectural discussion. But the urbanist discussion really is about that mixed use, and the Disneyfication in all reality, which is the cartoonification of the real thing, is more like the big box, what they call power center, right? Because what is it? It's a big box store.
Yeah.
It's a warehouse. And what do they do to make the warehouse more appealing?
They put a mask on it.
They put a mask on it. Exactly. They just make that mask as fabulous as possible. But guess what? Every single old town, the facade was just as important. It's just the scale was different and didn't require an automobile to go there. In the old town stuff, it was still just a box. Those old stores, it's still just a box. And they put a facade, a mask on it. But there's something about the difference between the scale of the big box power center and an old downtown and the character of those masks that go on each of those things and the facades that are presented that really lend to this discussion point about why are those things different? Mike, why are they different? What's different about that power center in that downtown? Even though functionally they are the exact same thing.
It's the automobile. When you think about a power center,
But don't be bashing on people's cars. I love my car. I'd never give up my car.
it's not bashing. It's recognizing the scale at which the two things are done. A big box store has to read like a billboard. At the scale of a human being, the big box doesn't provide comfort because of its size. Whereas if you're on a high street in a European city or a main street in the United States, the buildings are meant to feel and read at the scale of the human being.
So when you say the scale of human being, for a lot of our listeners, including me, in all honesty, like defining that has always been an issue when we say, well, the human scale or the scale of the human being. Can we just dive into that for 2 seconds, then we'll get back onto the scale of the things, the scale at which things are designed. How do you define human scale?
Well, I mean, there's a number of ways to try and express that. I think in my mind, it's what feels comfortable in terms of when you're talking about buildings and you talk about the buildings framing the public realm, you're talking about both the height of the buildings and you're talking about the distance between the buildings. There's a point at which the buildings are too far apart that you become uncomfortable. And there's a point at which the buildings become too tall and you become uncomfortable. And it's the combination of the two, how far they are apart, how tall they are, that will determine whether, because again, based on our DNA instincts of protection, when things feel too open, then the concern, the natural man part of us is concerned about the saber-toothed tiger jumping us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, vulnerable.
Yeah. So vulnerability, great word. So within the context of a power center where you park your car and there's all this open space in the parking lot and you're a distance from these very large buildings, it isn't until you probably get into the building and maybe inside the aisle of the building that you start to, I don't know if you've ever noticed that just in terms of how, your heart rate, whether your skin becomes clammy, things of this nature. All of those things are impacted by the scale of things. So if we're talking about human scale as it pertains to this idea of mixed use and combining things, it's really speaking in terms of the historical context of how things worked prior to zoning, because they were doing things based on self-preservation. They were doing things based on the relationship of what they were building to the land that it was sitting on. How do you create protection in those environments? It comes through being able to match to these things so that you're not oh boy, I'm losing the word. You're yeah. Well, I'll quit trying to chase the word in my head. It's just it's trying to be conscious of what provides comfort and what is emitting discomfort in terms of the response.
Yeah, your own natural response to your built environment. And I like the word that you used in terms of nature. And when we look at a relationship that we as human beings have with nature, traditional towns prior to the advent of like all the engineering that we do enjoy, and we do enjoy it because we do love our cars, and my car is awesome. And we love, and the reality is we love power centers and going to Target and whatever and malls and all this stuff, even though they're less desirable now. And we're in this weird, just what do we like? I think we're confused as a society right now in terms of what we're trying to build and what we want. We love the historic stuff, but we love the conveniences that modern car gave us. And how do you actually marry these two without making it a complete disaster? But if we look at it and think about it in terms of nature-based relationships rather than engineered-based relationships, I think that becomes kind of your primary modus operandi in terms of how you should begin to filter all of your decision-making when you're looking at your built environment.
Yeah.
Is this something that enhances my nature-based relationships with both my fellow human beings and the environment that I'm experiencing? Or can I only experience this environment based on the engineering capabilities of the thing that allows me to experience it? Because if I can't get from here to there through nature, then, and it requires a train, it requires a car, it requires a hovercraft, then it's like, you might be relying too much on, it's like the whole idea of the skyscraper. They're super cool, but man, when the power goes out and those elevators don't work, it's kind of suck when you're up there on the 51st floor.
Right.
So mixed use, what's been your experience in terms of people's responses as things try to get developed, and when does it succeed? When does it fail?
I'll start with the fail. One of the problems that we have right now in terms of current practices is mixed use tends to be a buzzword, and the way that mixed use is both regulated and built is from a place of basically a hybrid version of use regulation. It's not a true mixed use. It's a fabricated mixed use in that what's being regulated is a ratio of different uses. And the policy is actually specifying you'll deliver this much residential, this much commercial, this much office.
But it's still segregated zoning.
To a degree, and it can be. The problem with that thinking is you are not being responsive to another form of regulation that the developer is subject to, and that's the market.
Yeah.
The market should be weighing in when you're dealing with mixed use, which is why it's so important to get the buildings right, because the market, one of the problems with the current system is you will see these up and downs in the different real estate markets based on overbuilding and then having to correct. And if you're creating a mixed use environment, what you need are buildings that are able to flex.
Yeah.
You need space that can be a coffee shop one day and an insurance office the next day. Well, maybe not the next day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One exits, something else comes in. The space itself is able to flex based on what the market needs at a given point in time. That requires some discipline, both from a policy standpoint and from a developer standpoint. That's a different building type that not everyone's going to be willing to invest in.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about trying to change the market and how it works, in my opinion, one of the most effective things to do is to start to downscale so that you're working more incrementally. You're working at a smaller scale in delivering your environment. Because if you have to deliver, you take some of the mixed use projects within our region here, they are enormous projects.
Yeah, enormous.
And so they're having to zone, design, and develop that. Granted, it's in phases, but it's being done all at once. One big lump, bam.
Yeah, there's this master plan.
Yeah.
Here's your master plan, your master development agreement regarding the master plan.
Yeah.
It's really hard to change, and so this is what you deliver, even though you don't know what the market may demand in the next 10 years by the time you get to phase 29 or whatever you're doing.
Yeah. So when you do things that way, the system becomes very brittle in that you built a space that's specific to an office tenant, and the office market gets saturated, you lose a tenant, and you may have that space sit vacant for years because it's designed to be office space.
Yeah.
It isn't able to flex.
Yeah. Yeah. I've lived and worked all over the country, and right now I'm being reminded. So when I lived in New Jersey, I worked for Alberto and Associates, which was a small architecture firm. And that was honestly my only experience working in an architecture firm. Before I worked in an engineering firm, was trained by builders, and then went on my own and have my own firm now. But in that firm, we had an office above retail in downtown Haddonfield, New Jersey. Now, Haddonfield, New Jersey it's a beautiful little city, and it's just on the other side of the river from Philly, and the downtown it's like the perfect quarter mile, and you have the large houses right next, and then just beautiful houses that go out. The school's right close to downtown. There's parking behind all the retail, but the office was in an appropriate spot above the retail, which was on the main level adjacent to the pedestrians who needed it more than the office did. And so this idea of flex and how everything works, until you really experience it on a daily basis, you don't understand how glorious it can be and how it can actually work. Because when I look at master plans that I've seen from other developers, I look at it and it's like yellow is here, red is here, this is here, and it all still exists. So it's mixed use within the overall realm.
It's mixed use,
quote unquote. But I look at it and like, you still segregated all the parts of the pizza within the pizza. Yeah. It's like you really did. You just put all the pepperoni here. You put all the anchovies here.
All on the
green
table.
peppers here. It's all on the table, but it's all still segregated. We look at this round table and it's like, oh, you're here, you're here, you're here. And it sort of works, but it's like, no, guys, it's like, no, you can, if you have a park, you can actually have townhouses that line the park. So you actually have the people without a yard adjacent to the thing, so they have a public yard.
Yeah.
And then you actually have people with a yard not adjacent to the thing with. Yeah. It's like there's this logic that you can actually follow in terms of urban design that I don't know that people understand because of a lack of, I want to say, conscious or I mean, well, I don't know what the proper word would be, but awareness or observation or critical analysis of the built environments that they exist in to see what exists where and why. And how do we actually get some of those parts and pieces in the right spots to maximize the overall value of the community so it actually feels like a community and no one actually wants to leave.
Yeah.
Because when you get all the parts and pieces right, that pizza's delicious. If you separated it all, it's like all I got was just the pineapple rather than the whole Hawaiian and the pineapple and ham.
Right.
That's a gross pizza. I want the ham and the pineapple, which is really delicious.
Right.
And so, like, where it goes wrong is, I appreciate you addressing where it goes wrong. How on earth do we do it right?
Well, you have to work at a smaller scale, and you have to be willing to allow things to be incremental. And if you can do that, then the investment is different and the investor. If you're working at a smaller, more incremental scale, I've seen incredible examples of dentists who will build a building and they will put their dental office on the second floor and then have retail underneath them. And you do something like that. What is the dentist doing? He's making his business more profitable by being a real estate investor. He's supplementing his mortgage on the building because he has a tenant. Mm-hmm. The only way that happens is if you're allowing things to be more organic. You're addressing the form that things take and allowing the ability to deliver mixed use both horizontally and vertically by right, and not requiring it to be in some master plan project that's 50, 100, 200 acres. It's doing things. Granted, it might be a little bit slower. Mm-hmm. But I know you have too. I have seen projects. I shouldn't call it a project. I have seen communities around this country that are absolutely stunning because they've been willing to develop this way. They might still be called a master plan, but it's the rate at which they're able to do things. Do you have to go big when you do things, or can you be small and incremental?
Yeah, that time horizon is a super important factor to all of this because there's a whole generation that changes when you're in a giant master plan community, and the needs of that generation will change and alter from when you begin to when you end. Yeah, and it's crazy. I mean, like for instance, Gen Z right now, and I don't know how many Gen Zers would even be listening to this, but man, you should be, because it affects you in terms of affordable housing and how you do. So when I was in my early 20s, like I think I mentioned this before, I was a flight attendant, lived in Chicago. I didn't have a car. I was a broke flight attendant, flying for American Airlines at O'Hare. And so I was off the Lawrence stop, which I think was 5 stops down the Blue Line going down to downtown. And I lived in what was called Jefferson Park. It was a neighborhood in Chicago. And I lived in, I think it was a 24-plex apartment that was on a corner across the street from a park that had a community pool. And around the corner was also the library, the post office, all the government institutions, the train line, the train stop, the bus station, Dunkin' Donuts, and all your basic needs were right there. And behind the apartment was a Walgreens and a supermarket. So everything was right there. And that was my awakening. That was my red pill moment where I was like, holy cow. So I can actually live a very, very decent life as a single dude with my roommate here without a car. And I didn't need one because all my needs were taken care of. I could get to downtown super fast, do the shore in the summertime and all those things. And it was absolutely amazing. And I realized as I began to observe through my travels and through living there in Chicago in that particular neighborhood, there's relationships and there's architectural character of the walls that make up the urbanism that are critical to make a mixed use thing work. And when we don't understand those relationships, it will fail every single time. And I think in the future, what we should do is we should have a discussion about, honestly, like case studies, and say, here, let's look at a city, pull it up on a screen and just talk through it. It's like, this is what works. Here's where this is, and help people understand kind of the more intricate aspects of how you can get zoning to have a practical application in reality if the right architect is involved to deliver the right aesthetic so that a builder can build it and someone will buy it and rent it.
Yeah.
And then that's what, in the end, generates community, because it's the people. It's the people in the end.
Yeah.
And
It should be about the people.
it's about the people.
Yeah.
And right now we think of real estate as a financial tool and not as a community building tool.
Right. Yeah. It's about investment first rather than the betterment of lives of human beings.
Yeah. And it's sad because we don't have to go to these old towns to see beautiful things. We can actually choose to build them in our own backyard. It's us that prevent.
If the DNA will allow us.
We can change the DNA. You,
Yes.
as individuals out there, you can actually change the DNA. Mike, is there anything else that we need to cover here that you'd like to talk about on mixed use stuff before we wrap this up? If you were to tell the audience, hey,
The parting shot.
yeah,
I guess what I would say is we need to be more willing to chase what it is that we both want and need. Real estate, yes, it's an investment, but it absolutely, without question, should not be the primary part of making our decisions at the level of the household. I love where I live for many reasons, and sure, it's a great investment because of where I live, but the impact that it has on my life and my ability to live, I'm willing to pay a little bit of a premium because of the benefits that it provides me. It provides me walkability. It provides me access to my daily needs within a walkable range. I don't have to have my car every day. I dread when I have to use my car because of the level of anxiety that it creates to be in that hustle and bustle. I think what you're, just a little bit of commentary and a kudos to you. I think what you're doing, Clayton, is hopefully helping people to be more self-aware of their surroundings and understanding that they don't simply have to accept things the way that they currently exist.
Yeah.
Yes, you're going to be like Sisyphus pushing the stone up the hill to try and get things to change for a while. But, you push a stone up a hill long enough, that hill's going to grade itself down. And that's part of what we're trying to do in terms of fixing things. Because our built environment absolutely affects our lives, and it affects our well-being. I mean, that is indisputable. And we need to do better. We can do better. And part of what you're doing is helping people to become self-aware so that they can decide how they can pitch in.
Yeah.
That's important.
Well, thank you. It's been fun having you on. And these discussions, we'll continue them. So everybody out there, thank you for joining this podcast. If you have any questions, thoughts, or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. If you're watching this on YouTube or if any other platform, just reach out to us if you want us to cover any other additional issues. And Mike's willing to come on and we can go through case studies. We can do all sorts of things to actually bring more life to this topic, because it is absolutely important, and what he said is critical. It affects our daily life. And one of the things, in order to maximize the overall value of our human flourishing, our individual human flourishing, we really do need to be part of a community that we have shared values, and some honestly not shared values, so that we can understand how to negotiate conflict together. And when you come together as human beings, it's part of learning how to become the best you, right? There's a different experience when I'm driving down the freeway and I'm flipping off the guy who cut in front of me and honking at him in my little isolation mobile, versus I got on a shared transportation thing and I'm forced to say hi to my Uber driver, or I accidentally bump into, the young mother with her child in a stroller on a train. And it's like, oh, apologize. Oh, how old's your child? Oh, that's so cute, right? And so you have these interactions where you actually can increase those serotonin levels, those things that make us human. And that's what good communities do, that are based on nature and nature-based relationships, is it reinforces our own humanity, where it gives us opportunities to become our best selves. Whereas when we live as a cog in a machine in an engineered environment, it is much more difficult to actually engage those parts of us that become our best selves. And so thank you for joining us on the Clayton Vance podcast, and we will continue to always explore why the world looks the way it does and what we can do about it. We'll see you next time.